It's about that time for some Sports Zone. Welcome one and all to our debate set. I'm your host, Zach Wolchuk. We have a stacked show for you today. Joining me now is Alejandro Espinoza and Connor Bean. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Zach. Getting ready to talk some baseball.
Let's talk some Rangers. The Texas Rangers clinched their second straight AL West Division title over the weekend and are postseason bound. What do you think the Rangers' expectations are heading into the postseason?
For sure they're going to win the American League Conference. I mean, it's no doubt they have 4 more games, and they're all going to be home games, and so they got home field advantage. The question is, though, how well will they do in the playoffs? Because you have possibly the Toronto Blue Jays playing them, and if you all remember the last game, I mean, it was a huge brawl out, so who knows what's going to happen in that game.
Well, the Rangers don't have home field advantage yet. They're a half game up on the Red Sox. Red Sox and Rangers are playing teeter-totter right now for home field in the AL, but if they do, you think that it's going to be a help for them to make it to the World Series?
Definitely, I believe so.
Connor?
I agree with him about the home field. I think we will take care of this home field. We got 4 really easy opponents that we do not need to lose to, all at home too. When it comes to the playoffs, I think the Blue Jays will get that wild card against the Orioles, and we might see some Street Fighter 4 in there.
Yeah.
Odor versus Batista.
Some Batista Odor too.
Some Batista Odor too.
Welcome to the UFC fights in the MLB.
And then I am confident in this team that they will win the American League as well. I think either Boston or Cleveland, I think we have the capability and we have the tools and we have the right personnel to get through and get to the World Series.
So both of you think the Rangers are the favorites in the American League right now?
Definitely.
Not worried about the Red Sox at all. It seems like a magical kind of season for David Ortiz.
It always is. And I mean, it's for baseball. I mean, 2013, after the Boston Marathon, the Red Sox won the World Series. They were emotional. This year, Papi's retiring, and so it's an emotional for the Red Sox as well. And so I'm not saying that they're not the heavily favored, but they're definitely going to be the tough team if Texas plays the Red Sox in the ALS. So
you look up and down this postseason, there's storylines everywhere. Papi's retiring. Cleveland's trying to win another championship for their city besides the Cavs. The Cubs are trying to win their first World Series in 100-some years. The Rangers have never won a World Series. So this whole thing is just a bunch of big old soap opera, if you ask me.
Any X factors we see for the Rangers moving into the postseason?
not really. I mean, it's going to be
none.
Sorry,
nothing.
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, there will be factors. I mean, the biggest factor, is going to be the pitching. I mean, obviously you're going to have Cole Hamels. Probably he's more than likely going to be the starting for in the playoffs, and we're talking playoffs here. Question is, what about for the rotation? Because I mean, you have Martin Perez, who has not been so well.
Martin, yeah.
Orale, yeah. And then Kobe Lewis. I mean, he's got a lot of experience, but playoff-wise, not as much, and it's very unpredictable what's going to happen with the rotation for pitchers.
So you're concerned with Colby?
Definitely.
Connor?
Yeah, I got two X factors. Number one, the bullpen. I think the bullpen is going to come in here and play really well. 40 games won this season. That's either it's a good thing and a bad thing because they win 40 games, but the starters aren't finishing their job right. And then the second factor is Ian Desmond. Like, I have an API out for him. Like, where the heck has he been? Before the All-Star break, we were like, man, I'm so glad we got this guy. If he can get to that level where he was playing before All-Star break with his 20 home runs, I think
he was killing it.
Yeah, he was killing it. I think we'll have a really good shot getting to the World Series.
Shin-Soo Choo, injured a lot, in and out of the Rangers lineup. Early prognostications are he's going to start bat leadoff possibly in the ALDS. We worried about Choo at all? Do you agree with that decision?
I totally disagree. I mean, we signed Carlos Gomez, pretty much out of nowhere. He's leading off for us right now, I believe, and doing pretty well. He has a couple home runs, fed right into the rotation. So right now, I love Shin-Soo Choo, but right now I don't think we really need him at this point.
Yeah, same thing. I have respect for him, but I mean, it's too risky right now. I mean, the Rangers, they've been lucky so far. They've been having these one-run win games, and so they really.
Is that luck, or is that just gritty, never ever quit attitude that the Rangers have?
I say it's luck. I don't know about you guys, but I believe it's just complete luck, and luck is going to wear out at some point, and you don't want it to be because you start a pitcher who's been injured several times, and so it's a really risky move if you decide to start him.
I really don't agree with that. I think it is grit, that never ever quit attitude. Think how many games they've won by one run. Think how many games they've won.
But how come you couldn't really do that much last year or the year before or in 2014?
Probably didn't have the personnel right now. Let me look at the people we got in the trade deadline. Beltran, Lucroy, Carlos Gomez, great. All these come from behind wins. This is grit, toughness, attitude. I've never seen the Texas Rangers have this grit in a very long time. So I think it's going to serve them well once they get to the postseason.
And so do you expect them to be winning by 1 point, by one run in these playoff games?
I think they need a little bit more cushion. But if it comes down to it where it needs to be one run, I think they'll get it done.
And do you think that's going to work against teams such as Toronto and even possibly Boston? I mean, who knows?
Cleveland?
Cleveland.
You're not taking the Indians seriously.
You know. Right now.
It's Cleveland.
Okay.
Right now.
Well, LeBron might have something else to say about that, but yeah.
I mean, right now, you know, you look at Cleveland, you know, Kluber's going to be out for a little bit. But I do believe that once it gets down to the one-run games, it's over. You know, just because they've been doing it for the whole postseason. They're consistently doing it. It's not just like a little fluctuation. They're consistently winning these games by one run. So, and Sam Dyson. No one really talks about Sam Dyson.
We'll see. I think the bullpen's going to come in clutch, and so will you, Darvish and Cole Hamels. They're going to have to lead the way for the Rangers to make a serious push to the World Series. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time to talk some Mean Green football. So stay with us right here on SportsZone. Welcome back to SportsZone. Jumping on board with me now is Jordan James and Taylor Phillips. How about that double overtime comeback win for the Mean Green?
Oh, yeah. What a win. The first overtime win they've had since 2009. That was their first road win since 2013 against Tulsa. And I think a lot of the thanks has to go to Jeffrey Wilson. I mean, 18 attempts, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns. And get this, 8.7 yards per carry. That's almost a first down every time he touches the ball. He's 5th in Conference USA with 352 rushing yards on the season. It's just, that's something you haven't seen in a long time here at this school, a powerful rushing game, and I think that's something they need to build on.
Taylor, I think you're forgetting about Mason Fine. Mason Fine was the quarterback of the North Texas football team, and overall, I believe the freshman is growing. He had a key pass at the end of the second quarter when he threw the 75-yard pass to Kenny Byers. That was very impressive. As far as the offense as a whole, the offense They've scored consistently. Well, they scored 3 touchdowns with less than 2 minutes and 24 seconds left.
Absolutely.
So credit the offense for getting going.
Absolutely. But I think one thing, though, with Fine that I'm worried about is the offensive line. And they, once again, just like Florida, they had seven sacks allowed when they were playing Florida, 5 sacks allowed this week against Rice. They did make some changes, though. Against Florida, they had Jordan Murray playing left tackle and Garrett Gunter playing right guard. Made some switches. Alex Woodworth and T.J. Henson got their first starts. Is a little better. They can clearly run block because Jeffrey Wilson's tearing him up. Passing, though, and just pass protection, that's something they need to work on.
Mason Fine's mobility, though, what kind of impact do you think that has to help out that struggling offensive line?
It's huge, considering that the offensive line is not really good at all. You need a mobile quarterback back there. That's why the coach made the switch to a player like Mason Fine. You need someone versatile back there, and that is Mason Fine. I just feel like the team as a whole, they respond better when he's back there. Like,
yeah, your boy Alec Morris was a little stiff back there.
Yeah, it's...
Well, you know, he's not used to playing, so what do you expect?
Sat on the bench for 4 years at Alabama.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I can't blame Fine for the game he had. It was definitely a coming out game for him. They needed to see a big game against a team. You saw Florida. You don't expect a whole lot against Florida. That offensive line, like I said earlier, didn't really step up. But Rice is a team, even though Rice was favored by 7 to win the game, that's a team you felt like they should beat. Rice is a team that...
Well, honestly, I didn't know because this is a team that won 1 game last year. So how do you know that they're supposed to win the game?
It's true. But North Texas looked strong against Bethune-Cookman. That's a game they should beat.
Bethune-Cookman, that's an FCS school. So what can I take from that?
Rice is a lower-tier Conference USA team, just like North Texas.
Rice competed against Baylor. So,
I mean,
did they compete against Baylor for a quarter? Maybe?
I mean, but still, they kept it close. I didn't know what to expect.
All 3 of the teams Rice played were good. They had Western Kentucky, they had Baylor, and Army. Those teams combined going into Saturday were 8-1, and the one loss Western Kentucky had was to Alabama. So
they got up on North Texas 17 in the first quarter.
That's right.
Mason Fine helped dig them out of that hole. Let's look at, you mentioned 1 win last year for the Mean Green. Mm-hmm. What is the biggest difference, do you think, between last year and this year?
Seth Luttrell is the biggest difference. This team has confidence. Last year they didn't believe in itself. They actually believe in the scheme, believe in the coaches and things like that, so it's a huge impact. And as a whole, they got this up-tempo offense going. The defense as a whole switched to a 4-2-5, which I believe is going to play dividends as the season progresses.
I went and looked at the stats from last season through 4 games to this season through 4 games. Surprisingly, they have less rushing yards, more penalties, and less passing yards. But the 3 stats that really stick out, less turnovers, more rushing touchdowns. We talked about Jeffrey Wilson. That is just, it's invaluable to me how much you can have a rushing game. Opens up the passing game because it's going to make them crowd the box. You're going to have to spread it out. Air raid offense, perfect for spreading out the offense. And more importantly, and keep in mind the Florida game really screwed up these stats because just everything was bad. 104 points through 4 games. They're starting to light up the scoreboard a little bit.
And also, Taylor, I think you're forgetting about the defense. The defense actually leads Conference USA in interception. I mean, the secondary with 4 interceptions.
Keyshawn McClain.
That's right. Conference USA player of the week defensively.
Special teams as well. Field position was a big deal in this game. Big time kick returns. maybe our field goal kicker and our punter, both of them. Really, how do you think special teams affects this team as well?
Special team is huge. In order for you to win the game, you got to win in all three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. So if they keep executing in special teams, then the other units will catch up.
All three phases, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the process, right?
All part of the process. Middle Tennessee, though, coming
yes.
up on Saturday. Looking ahead, what do we think from North Texas?
Middle
Tennessee,
Tennessee, they're actually leading Conference USA right now. I don't know what to expect. I mean, they beat a quality team in Louisiana Tech. They actually were down in that game. For them to come back shows a lot about that team. They have a really solid quarterback, really solid run game. But then again, on paper, it looks like Middle Tennessee could win that game. But like Seth Luttrell said last week, underdogs go down they win every week. You never know what can happen.
You mentioned that running game. Atavius Mathers, the running back from Middle Tennessee State. He's an Ole Miss transfer. He's already third in Conference USA in rushing yards, and he's tied for ninth in receiving yards. So we have a dual-threat running back. He can get out wide and catch passes. Yeah. Not too similar to what Jeffrey Wilson and Willie Ivory have been doing. Willie Ivory had a touchdown reception. Mason Fine's first of his career. But you mentioned Brent Stockstill as well. He's the top passer in Conference USA. And last season against North Texas, I don't know, how does 322 yards for 3 touchdowns sound? That was in Murfreesboro.
Sounds pretty good.
And you mentioned this is a different team than last year. This is going to be their first real test, their first real good Conference USA team. Because you don't expect them to beat teams like Florida. You expect them to compete, hopefully, if they're really progressing against good Conference USA teams.
So they going to win?
No.
I think they're going to keep it close.
No belief.
I think they're going to keep it close, but we'll see, though.
I liked what I saw offensively. The defense still didn't quite show what they wanted me to see. Bryce still had more total yards, more first downs. They did slow them down a little bit on third downs. It mainly came down to big fourth down stops near the end that helped North Texas prevail.
If North Texas beats, if they beat Middle Tennessee, this will be the first time they've been 3-2 since 1994. So
good nugget there. I like it. We're sticking with college football talk. Who's really the best team in the country? Stick around to find out. Welcome back to SportsZone. The college football season is in full swing, and we've seen several shakeups in the rankings up to this point. Now it's the time to find out what our analysts rank some of the best teams in the country. Across from the studio for me is Josh Conrad and Kyle Humans. Kyle, Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Zach. I'm here with Josh Conrad, and we're going to go through our top 10 power rankings of the college football season so far. So I'm going to start us out. My number 10 is going to be from my hometown of Waco, Texas, the Baylor Bears.
I'm out of here.
Hey, they're 4-0. They're undefeated. Big win against Oklahoma State last week at McLean Stadium. I think that they're a little underrated whenever it comes to their offense, and their defense is playing better.
Jim Grobe is our coach, though. I can't trust Jim Grobe. You know who I can trust? Chris Peterson, Washington Huskies head coach. Jake Browning's had a great season so far. They're definitely my number 10 team right now.
And then number 9 is actually going to be the Huskies' opponent this coming week whenever they play the Stanford Cardinal. Christian McCaffrey, he's had a great season so far, but Stanford coming off a game against UCLA where they didn't necessarily play very well. I'm kind of waiting for this Washington matchup to see who that team really is.
Reluctantly for me, I'm going to go with the Aggies at number 9. Really hard to put them up there. They've had so many early season starts like this, but I think the defense is legit this year. Myles Garrett could be a number 1 draft choice soon. Trevor Neidham's still a little iffy. That's why they're not higher, but I have the Aggies at 9 right now.
And then we're going to stick it to Texas teams. Houston at number 8 for me. I would have them higher, but OU's kind of fallen off a little bit. I'm still have a question mark over this U of H team, but Greg Ward Jr., he's the real deal. Tom Herman as well. What he's done with this program has been incredible so far.
Number 8 for me is going to be Wisconsin, and I have no idea how Wisconsin is in the top 10. I don't know how they've beaten the teams they have. I don't have them higher because their 2 wins are starting to lose their luster. Les Miles isn't even a coach anymore. Michigan State, how good was the Notre Dame win? So I'm going to keep them here. They might move up, but for now they stay at 8 for me.
And then at number 7, I have the Aggies as well. They've had a great season so far. Trevor Knight really did some growing up in the second half of that Arkansas game. So I'm excited to see what's going on in College Station and see if they can make some noise against Alabama in a couple of weeks as well.
7, I'm going to the farm. We're going to go with Stanford. I think Christian McCaffrey, you see all the pop-ups on ESPN 24/7. It's like they have some weird deal with Christian McCaffrey or something. He's a great player. The offense has struggled so far. That's why they're not higher. They don't even play a ranked team for the rest of the season after they play Washington. So if they can get past Washington this weekend, which I don't think they will.
Don't forget about the Big 12 or the Pac-12 championship game, though. That could potentially be another
ranked team.
Maybe.
So I think Stanford at 7 for now. We'll see. They should be, if they survive Washington, ceiling is they can go as far as they can go.
Now, I'm going to go to another Big Ten team, Wisconsin, at number 6 for me. Like you said, they've had 2 big wins. You don't really know how much those wins are. They still have a question mark over them because I don't know how good Michigan State or how good the other teams that they've beaten are this year. But I have them at number 6. They could be higher, but they play Michigan this week. I want to wait for that one first.
Speaking of Michigan, I'm going to go with Michigan at 6. I mean, it's the Jim Harbaugh effect. The guy wins everywhere he goes. Great coach.
Wilton Spate, however you say his last name, has been a great quarterback thus far this year. Big game against Wisconsin this weekend. I think they'll show out. I think they'll dominate that game. So I have Wolverines.
Now, number 5 might be a little surprising. I actually have Clemson, the national runner-up from a year ago. They haven't necessarily looked very good against not-so-good competition. Now, they get a chance to prove themselves this week against Louisville. Deshaun Watson, he's still the real deal. That offense is incredible, but I do want to see how they play against Louisville this weekend before I actually put a stamp on how good this Clemson team actually is.
And at 5, I'm going to go with Houston. You call the OU win not impressive? I think that's a crazy impressive win. OU was in the playoff last year. We discount them because they played Ohio State and Houston. Though, so far, these teams are top 5 teams. I think OU is going to go on to win the Big 12. I don't think they're going to lose a game the rest of the year. I think Greg Ward is one of the best players, if not the best player in college football. Tom Herman is the most wanted coach for a reason right now.
Definitely is.
Cougars belong up there.
Yeah, and then at number 4, I had Michigan, the Wolverines, having a great season so far under Jim Harbaugh. I'm just not sold on them yet. I would have them at number 1 or number 2, but they've played well so far. They kind of got exposed a little bit against Colorado a couple weeks ago, though, and that's what's scaring me, and that's why they're not in that top 3 right now. But they have played well, and that's the reason why they're above Clemson, who hasn't played so well.
And speaking of Clemson, I'm going to go Clemson at 4. Guys, Clemson right now reminds me of Texas back in 2009. Beginning of the season, they had all these crazy expectations. Colt McCoy back then was talking about playing out of his mind, trying to do that every week. I think that's what Watson's doing right now. You know what's going to loosen that up? Louisville coming to town this weekend. I think we're finally going to see this team's true potential. I think Clemson's going to do really good. And number 4.
Now, at number 3, these top 3 teams for me so far are my for sure that I think they're going to be in the playoff. Ohio State, the only Big Ten team that I don't have a question mark about so far. They look like they could go undefeated the rest of the year. I think they would beat Wisconsin. I think they beat Michigan. I think they're the best team in the country right now under Urban Meyer, maybe with the exception of the 2 that I have above them. But they've played so well in the Oklahoma win. How impressive to go into Norman and really stomp the Sooners. Like you said, they're a great team still, but they stomped OU in Norman a couple weeks ago.
And 3, I'm going to go with Louisville. We have the September Heisman Award winner, the Geno Smith Award.
Oh.
I think it's a little premature. Let's see if he can go the full season. He's played 1 good opponent so far. 1.
They did destroy that opponent, though.
Everyone's been destroying Florida State's defense this season. I think it's too early to crown Louisville this best team. I think Clemson is probably going to maybe not steamroll this weekend, which I was about to say, but I think Clemson's going to beat them this weekend. They belong at 3 right now. I don't think they'll stay there. I think we're just too premature on crowning this team the best team right now.
And then my number 2, maybe a little surprising. I actually have the Alabama Crimson Tide at number 2, not number 1. National champions from a year ago.
Allowed?
I don't know. I mean, the AP poll has them still at number 1. I think they're a great team. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to breeze through the SEC. I don't think they're as good as my number 1. I'll reveal that in just a second. But Alabama, they've looked great so far. I have them above Ohio State. I think if they played again, they match up better against the Buckeyes, and that's the only reason I have them above Ohio State right now.
And again, speaking of the Buckeyes, I have them at number 2. JT Barrett, I think, is the best quarterback in the country. Urban Meyer is the second best head coach in the country. I just think the system works, the players work. It's like SEC speed in the Big Ten, which to me works. Number 2, Ohio State.
And number 1 for me, I have the Louisville Cardinal. I've already talked about how much I have I think highly of them. The way that they played against Florida State just stands out to me. That's the biggest statement win that I remember from the entire playoff era so far, just going and just manhandling the number 2 team in the nation at the time. Lamar Jackson, he wins the Geno Smith Award, the September Heisman. I think he's the best player in the country. 25 touchdowns. That's more than 4 teams on this list. Alabama, Ohio State, Baylor, and U of H.
It's early.
None of them have 25 touchdowns, but Lamar Jackson has that much to himself already.
Alabama's number 1 for me. Guys, is there a different number 1 than Alabama? It's Nick Saban. It's Alabama. I think there are some question marks still about them, but they beat Ole Miss. To me, Ole Miss could belong in the 10 best teams in the country by the end of the season. I'm not high on Ole Miss, but I think Alabama, they belong at number 1. I'm going to say this about my top 10. I think Ohio State's the only team that could remain unbeaten by the end of the year. I think all these 10 will lose, besides maybe Ohio State.
I think Ohio State and Alabama go undefeated in mine. I think both of those are great teams. I could definitely see Louisville losing to Clemson this weekend just because it's in Death Valley. That's a hard place to play. But overall, I mean, our top 10s are pretty even. It'll change. When talking about changing, do you think Alabama's going to win the national championship since you have them at number 1?
I do
who's
not.
your national champion?
I'm going to say no on that.
Who's your national champion?
Right now we'll say Ohio State. Right now we'll go back over to the host. Here we go.
Thank you, guys. Coming up next, we remember one of baseball's great young talents that was taken away way too soon. Coming up next on SportsZone.
A statement from Jeffrey Loria says, "It is with the deepest sorrow that I, together with my family and the entire Marlins organization, mourn the tragic loss of Jose Fernandez. Sadly, the brightest lights are often the ones that extinguish the fastest. Jose left us far too soon, but his memory will endure in all of us. At this difficult time, our prayers are with his mother, his grandmother, his family, and his friends. We just want to say to his family, if they're listening, that this is not about today or tomorrow. Jose is a member of this family for all time, and a member of the city of Miami and all of South Florida, all of Cuban Americans. His story is representative of a story of hope and of love and of faith, and no one will ever let that story die."
That was a touching moment we just witnessed with the Marlins and manager Don Mattingly. With me now is Joey Catalano and Jocelyn Mitchell. How are you doing?
Doing good.
The sports world has been in mourning following the tragic death of 24-year-old Miami Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez. What do you guys make of this?
I mean, just off the surface, another great young talent has been taken too soon. I mean, you think of the players that are in the major leagues right now from Cuba, Jose Fernandez, Jose Abreu, Yoenis Cespedes. Cuba is a hotbed for baseball, and for Jose Fernandez to stick out as much as he did, Rookie of the Year in 2013, two-time All-Star, just as you saw from that video, just a bright flame taken way, way too soon.
I feel that it hurts more because it was a situation that could have been avoided over something that probably wasn't that serious.
Yep.
But
boating accident, by the way, is how Jose Fernandez passed away.
yes, and looking at his teammates, for instance, D. Gordon, when he made his first bat with his right hand in respect to him, and then he made it with his left hand, which gave him his first home run for the season. And as he made his way around, he kind of struggled, and then he bats his chest and looks up in tears and stuff like that. It's real emotional because it makes you feel you have to be that person to understand what they're feeling. Yeah, we feel bad, especially because he was a big icon, especially for the Cubans in Miami, but they had a different bond with him. They were more like brothers.
I feel like piggybacking off of that, this wasn't some no-name pitcher either. I mean, granted, to the average baseball fan, you may not have heard of him, but this is a guy, he was 38-17 in his career, 2.5 ERA. I mean, these are unreal numbers. This guy was on his way. And if this didn't happen, he was probably going to get some max money by the end of this year. So, I mean, just how Major League Baseball took this, it was just a class act. Obviously, his teammates are going to need to find, or they don't need to find much motivation to continue on with this season. But it's just a really sad day for sports in general.
It's terrible. Jose Fernandez, potentially an NL Cy Young winner this year, still possibly might get the votes, and I'm sure it's difficult for the Marlins clubhouse and everybody involved in that organization. That's a wrap for today's show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at UNT SportsZone, and don't forget to check out Mean Green Game Day right here on NTTV, 2 hours before every Mean Green kickoff. As we close the show today, we would like to take a moment of silence to remember Jose Fernandez. We'll see you next week right here on SportsZone.